All right, and I will have to reshare those links in just a couple of minutes, but just want to say hello, welcome everyone. So my name is Stephanie Guzman. I'm the Assistant Director of High Impact Practices and Pedagogy in our University Teaching and Learning Commons. We're really excited to have this High Impact Practices Brown Bag is the second in our series this year. It's going to be the last one for this calendar year, and then we'll be back in the spring. So if you've never been with us before, welcome. We're happy to have you. And I know that some of our High Impact Practice committee members are here today too, so I'm happy to have everyone in the room. But we just want to kick off this conversation today. We recognize that we have a lot of knowledge and information in the room, people who have been engaged in community engaged learning and various types of service learning probably for a while now. So we do have 3 individuals that we've invited to share specifically their experiences to kind of show the depth and the breadth of what service learning or community engaged learning can look like so that we can further those types of conversations at UNCG. I will allow them to introduce themselves in just a minute, but just to give you an idea, these are kind of the questions that we're hoping for each of them to answer in their introduction. And then after they've each had a chance to share their experiences and introduce themselves, we will have just an open discussion and conversation. You can ask questions kind of just broadly about your what you're wanting to know more about related to service learning and community engaged learning as it relates to kind of our context here at UNCG. So our panelists are going to go through and answer the following. They'll talk about how they're using community engaged learning in either a co-curricular or curricular fashion. Maybe it's a mixture of both. They'll talk about how they structure or prepare their learners for the experience. They'll speak to some of the aspects that are going particularly well, and then they'll also list some of the challenges that they've faced in doing this type of work. And again, after that, we'll open wide up for questions and just have a conversation about what this can look like moving forward. So we are going to start with our 2 UNCG representatives, and then we also have one of our engaged scholars with us from NC Campus Engagement, which is formerly NC Campus Compact, Alison Walker, and she'll share after Liliana and Alejandro have had a chance to share theirs as well. So Liliana or Alejandro, do you have a preference of who goes first? Looks like you're, Liliana, would you mind going first?
Oh, what a gentleman, Alejandro. Okay. Well, my name is Liliana. I'm with the I'm a lecturer of Spanish here at UNCG with the languages and cultures department. And I have do I explain like just how or like the class that I'm teaching where we implement this or?
Yes, yeah, you can just share a little bit about what the class is about and how you integrate service learning or community engaged learning into that.
Okay, so it is a language class. It's a Spanish class, and I have a group of heritage speakers. That's the class that I've been teaching for the most part, and they are prepared before class. We kind of talk about like the expectations. Of course, it's always different once they start with what they're doing there. I give them a list of different places where they can participate, or they can, decide on a place where they want to participate. They're able to complete their hours and at the same time use the language and help people during this time. They have to identify and investigate like either a current social, political, or economic issue affecting this community. And there's some field work, interviews that they do in the community, some research. They have to prepare like a group presentation for that, and also complete a set of reflections on it. And they really like it. They always comment on they wish they could continue on with this, or they knew about it before the class. So for the most part, pretty successful. Some challenges, yes, we do have some sometimes. Not sure if you need more information or.
Could you speak a little to like the number of students that are usually in your class and where they are specifically placed and how you decided to work with that partner?
Usually the class, it's not bigger than 20 students, 2025. And they tend to pick something closer or within UNCG. They, for the most part, participate with the Center for New North Carolinians, although they have a list of options. I'm not sure why. They just kind of want to stay close, I guess. During the pandemic, I had a few students that were able to participate with another organization that we're doing like just through Zoom. But I felt like it was more challenging for them. They didn't seem as happy as when they're able to actually be in a place with the community. The big difference.
And how do you typically prepare your students? Like, do you take time in class to prepare them, or do you have anyone come in to kind of share and structure what that looks like for them?
In the past, we used to have someone that would come in and talk to the students, but now it's more of a challenge. And I usually take class time to talk about it and then go over, the different places they could participate and also invite them to maybe think of different options if they know about it. But usually it's class time that we spend together and talk about it. And also during the service, we also take a few classes to talk about what they're doing and how things are going, following up with what they're doing.
Thank you. Were there any other questions for Liliana and how she's using this in a curricular class-based context at this time? Sorry, doing my long Zoom pause. Okay, thank you, Liliana. So again, we can discuss more in our open discussion portion. So we'll go next to Alejandro.
Hello, everyone. All right. So I only taught last year service learning class. It was LLC 389. I teach at the Languages, Literatures, and Culture department. And this was it was part of Global Village, but it's about literatures, cultures, and it didn't have a language component. Okay, so it was more about culture, involvement with the community. And the approach that I gave was to see if we can connect our local issues with the idea of virtue. Okay. To do that, we started with some theoretical frames. For example, we explored some of the work of Hannah Arendt and the difference between work, action, labor, and try to see, okay, so what is as agents? We have an economic aspect, we have a moral aspect, we have a political aspect. So we try to understand those different aspects of our life. And then we started to read articles about community engagement and about what is the meaning of service and service learning. One of the things that I stressed was this: okay, you are not saving anyone's lives. Okay, so of course we started to, students had to choose their own agency to serve. It didn't have an idea. I will suggest some of them. Things were a little difficult because this was last semester and we were still with COVID, but they all managed to find an agency, and some of them they volunteer online, some of them they were physically involved. Among all the ideas, it was, this was related to, okay, you are not there I don't want you to have any type of white savior complex or upper class savior complex or religious savior complex. So we eliminate, you are there to learn. And above all, you're there to learn how our community is, how it's structured, what problems do you have. Of course, in the middle of this learning, you're going to be collaborating with agencies. Those agencies, they may have some type of helping mechanism, okay? But all this is a learning, and the service that you provide, you have to think about, let's see if we can just give a hand here. And we do that not only with the activities that they did, but also we did that with the readings. And the readings, again, from Hannah Arendt to Aristotle, there's one called Service Learning and the Path to Virtue. And also So this connects with one of other classes that I'm teaching about local and global problems and the connection between local issues and global issues. So it was, I mean, the design is a little theory, a little practice, and I don't know, the challenges, I think the major challenge was COVID. The students didn't come out with good agencies to volunteer. And how do you verify that they volunteer? For example, I asked them, you can do in honor basis, so you can do, you can actually call, or you can send the referrals and you send them an email. There are many different ways to do this. I don't know. I mean, that's my experience was positive. I'm going to start doing it again this coming semester. And I think that one of the things that I'm going to do is to be more involved in choosing the agencies. I don't know. Questions, Stephanie, anything that you want me to address specifically? Or
yeah, so I know you said you're using this in the global village. So do you have students beyond just a single class that are encouraged to engage in service learning? Do they do any type of like undergraduate research in addition or in combination with that service learning? Or how do you maybe layer some of those different practices together with just the global learning experience?
Yeah, so in Global Village, this for first-year students, I only had just a few. The rest of the class, they were just LLC majors and minors. And they do have to do a paper. And the type of academic paper, I mean, they had exams, they had quizzes about the readings that they do. For every reading that I assigned, the students had to complete some quiz. And then at the end of there were exams and there was a paper. And the paper, it was a type of academic paper where they have to reflect about what is the meaning of service learning and take a position about it. And it's that a position that will include some of the concepts that, that we managed during the semester. Okay, so it was, okay, you learned this, you did this, combine it into some type of academic approach paper at your level.
Right, to get the application of their knowledge. Great.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions at this time about how service learning is used with the Global Village? And I also wanted to share, I'm always a big proponent of Google Docs because it can be hard to always kind of speak out and ask the questions that we have, but feel free at the bottom of the document that I just shared with everyone to add notes or questions as we're going through that we could revisit as a group once we get to the open discussion piece. And then just to kind of build the community in the space, I have a area at the top where you can add your name and how you might be or want to use community engaged learning at UNCG so that we can keep this conversation going even beyond this session. So you're not required to add that there, but you're more than welcome to.
One thing I would like to add. So for example, what is the I don't know, the percentage of class time and service time, and how do you address like in a class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Like, so this coming semester, what I'm going to do is basically teach more or less, not the 3 days every week, but almost. So, and the service is going to be maybe 10, 15 hours. And I'm going to consider more or less part of that homework time. Okay. And it's possible that I skip some Fridays to just push them to find the agency. So I mean, maybe like the first week, like, okay, this Friday there is no class, but you have to do that. And with that, I don't allow excuses because they're in class. No, sorry, I have to work. I don't know. Classes canceled on Friday. Find the agency. I want the agency on Monday. And that pushes students to find an agency. If you have the agency and you have already planned like what, then you just give them the agency, okay, be in touch with that. Be in touch with the agency, let's start setting up the schedule. Give me the schedule by Monday, so you can do both things.
Yeah, that's a good question. I imagine a lot of others are also facing a similar challenge about how do you kind of scaffold that in, because they're probably balancing other work that they have for the class and then also reaching out to the agency. So that's a really good point that I made a note of, that we can kind of group source and problem solve together, because I think a lot of people have a similar question. Great. Were there any other things that you wanted to add at this time? Or any questions anyone has? All right. Okay, we will move on to Alison to hear about how things are going from more of a kind of what's happening at High Point University, but also what experience she may have had working with others and around the campus system. So go ahead, Alison.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I am the Director of Service Learning at High Point University. This is my 12th year with the university. I'm housed in the English department. I teach creative writing and literature courses there, as well as in the honors program and our graduate program in creative communication and business leadership. We just started the Center for Community Engagement. This is our first full year in operation. So this is a sort of an umbrella term to house all of the various avenues of community engagement that occur on our campus. So I'm just one piece of that broader puzzle. I oversee the service learning aspect, which of course is what's happening in the classrooms. That's the academic side of service learning and community engagement. But within our center, we also house the co-curricular outside of, so the student life side of service learning. So we have the volunteer center, which oversees all of the service clubs on campus, both Pan-Hellenic and those outside of the Greek system. And so that provides students opportunities to do service outside of class. We also oversee the Bonner program, which is an AmeriCorps programs for undergraduate students. It's scholarship based. Students come in and for that scholarship, they agree to do a certain number of service hours during their 4 years, and they earn a social innovation minor. And they take a lot of service learning classes and do a lot of meaningful work within. They are all sort of partnered with specific social justice areas of passion and interest, and then also with specific community partners. We also oversee the VISTA program, which is a graduate level program for recent graduates. That's through the AmeriCorps program. It means volunteer in service to America. And so that's students, it can be graduates of HPU, but it's also lots of students from around the Piedmont Triad area, other institutions. And that's basically like a one-year paid internship. The students in the VISTA program are partnered directly with a service, a community partner, and they work to liaison on their behalf. They oversee the service happening there, and they do really meaningful work. It comes with a stipend and room and board and a meal plan as well. So it's a really great way for students to kind of take a gap year before graduate school. If they're not sure what they want to do, it gives them an opportunity to network. And a lot of those vistas end up accepting job opportunities in the nonprofit sector within this area. So it's a great way for us to keep all of that good talent here within the Piedmont Triad. Let's see. I think those are all of them. So that's the Center for Community Engagement. And then within that, I'm in service learning. We kind of approach community engagement and service learning in tandem, but we recognize that there's a difference of what that looks like on the ground in an academic space. So our service learning classes require 25 hours of service with a community partner. We typically discourage faculty from letting students choose a partner or having multiple partners within a class. We have found that it works better to partner with one or two nonprofits and let the faculty. So I have a training program workshop series for service learning faculty. It's a 4-part series, 10 hours of in-person training. It comes with a stipend. In this way, we kind of create a foundation in anti-racist pedagogy, in critical service learning pedagogy, and then we help with those logistics by saying, here is the database of all of the community partners we already have established relationships with. And we encourage faculty to find the agencies that most closely align with their course objectives, their theme or the content of the course pedagogically. And then that way they begin to do service there as faculty members and form those relationships with those community partners. And then it makes the logistics a little bit easier. We also use GivePulse, which is an app that students can use to log their service hours. And it also creates a connection between the community partners and the university. So it gives the agencies agency over, control over validating those hours, and all of that happens digitally. It's a way for us to track all of those hours for grant purposes and whatnot. And it also gives those community partners a platform to share, hey, if they've got events where they need a certain number of people on hand to do something on any given day, we can push those notifications out and they can know that these certain folks are coming, and then it pushes reminders to them so those people actually show up for the event. So we're in the beginning stages of Give Pulse, but I know a lot of the universities in the area already use it. And I think UNCG is also on it as well. It gives us as a community, as a Piedmont Triad, higher institutions of higher learning community, it gives us a way to kind of allow our students to work within that space. And, we have UNCG students sign up to do work with some of our service partners and Wake and different places too. A&T, they've been taking a lot of our, we have some Beyond Sports, a lot of outreach with after school programs that's sports based, and a lot of the A&T students have been snagging up all of those opportunities really quickly when we put them out. So we use that 25 hours of service for service learning classes, but we say anything that falls below that can still be community engagement. So oftentimes there are faculty that maybe have a project in their class that's client-based. And so they want to do that client-based project within the curriculum of their class, but it doesn't rise to the level of 25 hours of service. So that's community engagement, and that's a more informal approach to service learning, and it still comes with that foundational pedagogy in service learning, but it gives a little more flexibility for faculty to do some of this work without having to have that rigor of 25 hours. In addition to that, we have several requirements. We have students go through a service learning orientation before they embark on a service learning course. We do background checks for all students that are working with minors out in the community to ensure the safety of our community partners. We require reflections, so reflective writing components within the service learning courses. And then we have all of our service learning classes count toward general education, experiential learning within our Gen Ed core. And so we also have one learning outcome that the faculty will embed in their own curriculum and their own learning outcomes in a course, so that we can kind of track and assess that along the way. As far as some things that are our greatest challenges, COVID, of course, was a challenge for all of us. This is our first semester back where we're truly running back at the levels that were pre-pandemic in terms of service and being able to send our students out into the community safely. So, of course, all of that was hindered. We've had a number of community partnerships, those nonprofits that just went under because of COVID. So we're trying to help support that growth as well, bringing them back. And sustainable, that's the main goal, right? Is that even though the students may shift, the classes may shift, we want these sustainable relationships that our community partners can depend on. We talk about service with rather than for or to. So as you were talking about sort of that white savior toxic charity model, we want to discourage that and encourage students to recognize that if you see the world is broken, then you're swooping in to try and fix it. If you see the world is weak, you're swooping in to try and help. And those are both hierarchical sort of top-down power differentials that happen. So we want service with. So we have a foundation in empathy training, service with alongside those community partners. And the first step in that is making sure that as our faculty craft service learning classes, that they are talking with those potential community partners and making sure that what their ideas for the course align with the vision for those agencies, so that we're not just coming in top down and saying, this is what we can do for you. We're saying, what do you need from us and how can we support that? And then it becomes a two-way street, and that learning is reciprocal, sustainable, mutual, all of those good things. Yeah. Questions?
Yeah, such a wealth of information, Alison. Thank you.
I had my coffee today, so forgive me for talking.
Perfect. I know, yeah, there's, a million follow-up questions. Fortunately, we had the chance to speak earlier, so I'm glad to have had that time. But I am just curious to hear, I know sometimes this is lunchtime, so it's okay if you can't come on camera right now. But for those who are here, I see some note taking going on in the document, just a little bit of sharing. Would anyone like to just kind of share about what their biggest questions around service learning are? Are you currently implementing service learning at UNCG? Do you want to, but you see that there are barriers? Just how are you envisioning using this, and how can we kind of work through that together to start building kind of our community, so that we can support each other through that work? And of course, that can be directed at one of our panelists, but it could also just be an open question.
I have a question that's prompted by some of your comments, Alison. Said some of these courses are in the Gen Ed program or receive Gen Ed credit. And I'm curious about the process to initiate that sort of arrangement. So were these courses already Gen Ed courses that were then adapted to include service learning? And if so, how to negotiate a general sense that Gen Ed courses are supposed to do a lot for a lot of people. So how was faculty development supported for that? And if these were courses that were new courses designed to sort of marry Gen Ed with service learning, was there a particular process that needed to be achieved for such a course to get into Gen Ed, since it can sometimes be admission to Gen Ed can sometimes be a bit of a guarded process. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Francis. That's a big one. So while all of our courses do automatically fulfill that Gen Ed experiential component, and that happened, it was just a matter of timing that we have just gone through a new Gen Ed revision. And so experiential learning was a component of that. And so we were able to partner with sort of the General Education Council that was building that new program. And that was coming through lots of faculty feedback and voting. And it took several years, but experiential learning rose to the top of what faculty wanted. And so we were able to say we could partner that way. And so that was the first step. But prior to the new Gen Ed, we still had service learning classes that fulfilled those. And it's not just the experiential learning. Like I teach courses that also fulfill the diversity component, that fulfill an arts component. We have some that fulfill what's like the history, it's called American context component. So a course can kind of, it can be advantageous if you're going to develop a service learning course for your Gen Ed, like students get more bang for their buck. And it often, service learning classes often invite that sort of diversity component into that space already. So that's a way you can, boost enrollment in a class if it's fulfilling those. But we also, we try to have a big tent approach with service learning. So we don't say, when I run those faculty development workshops, and I invite faculty in to get trained in service learning, it's all levels and all types of classes. So we have service learning classes at the graduate level. We have them in first year seminar. We have them as majors classes that are only, exclusive to a major. We have them fulfill minors. So really any course can be developed into a service learning course, or faculty can come to those workshops and start from scratch and say, I have this idea for a course that I want to build that's about an area of interest or passion for me, and I think it would fit with service learning, and so they can start from scratch. And so we just are there as a resource and a guide through that process. I'm trying to open it up right now to adjuncts, to allow, because we have adjuncts that teach. So I'm in English, so I know that system a little bit better, but primarily like our freshman composition classes. And we have a sustained relationship with the Community Writing Center, which is on Washington Street, which was historically the Black downtown prior in segregation. And so there's a lot of history there, and the Community Writing Center is a really great resource. And so we're trying to get some of our adjuncts to take what's already their freshman comp syllabus and develop it into a service learning section of that course where the students can go and tutor after school on reading and writing at the Community Writing Center. Our professional writing classes at the upper levels can tutor adults from the community on resume writing and developing their LinkedIn profiles and things like that. So we offer all of that as much as possible, and it really just depends on how your sort of system of approval for courses works. And trying to make that communication as transparent as possible, so that they know you're going to propose a course that has this service learning component, that you feel that it fits this way or that way within a department or within a gen ed. And the more explicit you are about that, and tailoring it to suit whatever those expectations are, the more smoothly you will get that course approved. Fingers crossed, anyway. Did that help? I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, we're I think in the process of rethinking what the specific requirements to get that like actual designation as a service learning course. I know, Allison, I think you mentioned that at High Point, you have to have, there's at least one student learning outcome that's been written. They have to meet the 25 hours and they have to do reflective portions of the class. But is that assessed at all by like your office centrally, or how does that work after they've gotten the designation and the course has actually happened?
Yeah, so we have 4 service learning outcomes that faculty, when they develop a course or revise an existing course to become service learning, they can choose 3 of those 4 to embed in their existing learning outcomes. So they can have whatever their outcomes are for the course itself, but we ask that they include 3 of those 4. Some will include all 4. And then each academic year, we pick one of those and we assess that internally within our program. And that we do through a Qualtrics survey at the end of the semester, and a short answer / essay question that kind of builds on the reflective writing work that they've done throughout the semester, and gives us data that's useful, right? So many of, I don't know about you all, but like our course evaluations that are administered don't necessarily give us the kind of data that's useful to us as teachers. So we want to make sure that the data we gather, and we make that available to faculty so they can use that in their own self-evaluations annually if they choose to do so. But we also anonymize it, so there's no, there's no risk to faculty of worrying that, oh, we're going to see whose course that was that got bad reviews or low numbers or whatever. It's completely disaggregated. But if they want it, we can ask specifically to pull it, and that happens through an administrative system that's separate from us. And then as far as the gen ed, we're working on how to assess that as well. We have a global perspectives inventory that we're piloting right now in those gen ed service learning classes to see if that will give us a useful measure. And that's a pre and post, and it's just Likert scale. So it's a very quick, easy one to administer. And we're piloting that this year to see if that can be a viable way for us to assess the gen ed component. And I'm happy to share any of that with anyone who's interested.
That is really helpful. Thank you. Are there any other general questions? I have more questions, but I don't want to be taking up time. I know several people have placed in the document just ways that they're considering about using some sort of community engaged that might not be that exact sort of service learning model, which is great. That's kind of what we want to explore in this, of how do we maintain that community engagement, even if it doesn't fit into a service learning framework per se. So are there things, as you're exploring these opportunities to connect with partners or identify partners, barriers that you're facing? Is there support that you're hoping that, some either combination of offices or just that the university will provide in getting you to where you want to be as an instructor in developing your courses? Do you have any like big picture questions that we could problem solve?
I have a question to kind of piggyback off of that, Stephanie. I'm curious, those of you who are doing service learning or community engagement, or plan to, how you're getting started, who you're coordinating with, for a little bit of context, and hopefully I capture this accurately. UNCG used to have a more centralized space and processes, very similar to what Alison's describing, through what was then our Office of Leadership and Service Learning. And now our Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement do a lot of working with students and connecting them with opportunities in the community. But the sense that I get is that, you know, some of the other engagement that faculty might have had at that time to actually get courses approved as service learning, to coordinate with others who could help connect a class with opportunities in the community or students with those community, like some of that has gone elsewhere. So I know that like Ike is on the call right now and he is engaged with working around service learning. We've got IC that works with faculty on their community engaged scholarship. But it seems like now on our campus, you have to go to maybe multiple places to get the support that you need around service learning and community engagement. And I know in the UTLC, we're looking at where can we provide some faculty development support around this. But I'm just curious from our UNCG colleagues, how it is that you're getting connected, where those challenges are, if you feel like you have a community of support or that you're just kind of doing this work on your own and kind of feeling your way as you go.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. So I think that the support is there. Again, you know, based on my experience, since I only did this last semester and it was COVID, I don't know if I could give you a a question about, okay, so how much support and how much the challenges. I mean, the challenges were mostly related about the relationship between agencies, students, and students with me trying to say, well, I'm afraid I want to do this online. Okay, well, let's try to find online. So it was a very weird semester to use it as an example for the next one. So to the point that I'm using the next semester as something totally new. And I'm revising the approaches to, you know, to how we establish connection with, for example, the university. Things that I have not thought, for example, things that, you know, I don't know, things that Alison was referring to, like, okay, what happens if they work with children? You know, to me, that was like, it was like a, oh crap moment. Like, okay, wait a minute. I haven't thought about that because I did have some trying to attend schools. You know, like, okay, well, I want to provide some type of tutoring service. So usually I have relied in the agency to do that part, you know. And so now I'm like thinking like maybe I should do something. Maybe I should ask UNCG if we have some type of protocols in regards to like to children. And at this moment, I'm starting to have more questions than solutions. So I came from a panelist. Now I'm becoming one of the other people trying to think like, hey, wait a minute, like, what are we doing here?
That's exactly what this is for. So feel
yeah,
free.
I know. I was like, okay, wait a minute, like, well, like, what's happening about this? Like, should we have some type of forms that are even across campus? Should we have some type of forms that we should all share about common practices? Do we have to share some type of curriculum to understand how this works? And you know, so.
Alejandro, what I love is that you said that you're revising the course. Like that's one of the biggest hurdles for me, is to help my faculty recognize that teaching a service learning course means it has to evolve with that partnership. You can't just create the course one time and then have these recorded or these lectures, PowerPoints, and just do the same thing in the same order every single semester ad nauseum off into infinity, right? It has to be this constant give and take and this willingness to adapt. So I use the phrases, you know, sage on the stage versus guide on the side. And particularly in service learning, you have to adopt a mindset of a guide on the side and be willing to say, you know, I grow as a teacher, as an instructor, when I'm willing to adapt and revise and continue to improve the course and modify the course as those partnerships develop. So that's a great thing. And as far as the forms and things go, yes, we use all of that sort of stuff. But if you can learn now, it's kind of a heavy lift. Like GivePulse is incredibly robust as a platform, like as a software. If you're, you know, it's taking us, this is our first semester with it and we're still learning, but it does have the capacity to have digital forms embedded. So as students sign up for a particular service opportunity with a particular partner, any of those liability forms and waivers and things that they need to fill out will pop up, and they cannot sign up for it until they complete those forms. So we're learning how to use that as well. And most of your, like you mentioned, if you're working with a partner that does work with minor children, a lot of those community partners will automatically have that background check embedded in their volunteer training and whatever paperwork those students might have to complete. We've just tried to, in order to assist our community partners, because we have some of those programs that we work with every single year throughout, we've tried to assist by making some of that background check stuff happen in-house centrally, so that we can oversee that and ensure that and take that onus off of the community partner. And also it comes with a fee. So in those little ways where we can help them out by running those background checks and saving them a little bit of money, we try to do that as best we can.
Yeah, but not only that, again, I'm starting to think now, like, okay, so for example, how do we train our students to be culturally sensitive whenever they work with refugees, for example? Understanding the different religions, like, should we include some type of material to cover cultural sensitivity, addressing different identities, ethnic backgrounds, etc.? You know, like, this starts to like, okay, so maybe I should include something at the beginning to talk about that. And
you mentioned Hannah Arendt, though, like you're already doing that. It sounds like you're doing that in your class. So that's exactly, that's what we encourage faculty to do. We do have some of those like introductory, what is service learning? What is bad service learning? Some of those articles, and I think I put those in the resources or a link to them, that we just make available to all our service learning faculty and encourage them to include a couple of those readings in the first couple of weeks to kind of do some of that baseline cultural sensitivity, anti-racist, DEI, whatever that might be, just give them a little bit of a foundation, because they come to us with those, particularly at HPU, I get a lot of students that have done volunteerism through church and that kind of work. And so I have to do a little bit of unpacking of that and helping them reframe that and recognize what those sort of top-down models, why that's called toxic charity, and how we can move past that as learners. Yeah, it's an ongoing struggle.
And I know you brought up the orientation piece before. Does your office like provide that centrally, or do you kind of help to maintain? I think we talked about this previously, but for the benefit of the group, like, do you have that uploaded into like Canvas and LMS of some sort and have everyone go through it, but in the context of their course, or do they have a centralized way of coming to get that information, or a little both and?
So we've done it both ways. During COVID, we made it an online because we had to pivot really quickly and we tried to, of course, there were service learning classes running when COVID hit. And so they'd been doing in-person hours and then they had to shift halfway through the semester. And then we had a year of most of our organizations weren't allowing them, so we had to pivot. So we did run that orientation through a virtual means and recorded it and that sort of thing. But we do strive to make that an in-person experience, and we give students their first hour of service hours credit to attend that orientation, mainly so we can help them see other students, meet other students that are in service learning at the same time, so they can see as a cohort. And so that there's that foundation. And then also it gives me an opportunity to get a little of feedback from them, like which ones have taken a service learning class before, which ones are new to it, what levels they are. So I can put them in contact with one another. And we have an honors program called Service Learning Scholars, where students that take 2 service learning classes are automatically eligible to do that. And then it becomes an independent service project, and then they graduate with honors and cords and things like that. So those orientations also are a way for me to gauge potential students for that program to recruit into that. And then so they'll see, like, so you were saying you don't really have at UNCG sort of a centralized location space for this anymore, but maybe that could happen at the school or department level. So like we have 3 main sort of arms of service. We have food insecurity based kinds of partnerships, and our Bonners and Vistas working on that particular issue. We have educational outreach, and then we have everything that kind of falls under sort of social justice writ more broadly. And so like I would think your School of Education, for example, like might be able to create a space for faculty in the School of Ed that are doing this work, and connections to specific schools where they could partner, right? And that would give you at least a little bit of that sense of community among your faculty doing that work at that level. And then you could do that. You said your modern languages and literatures and cultures, right? So maybe your department could do some of that too, and that would help you build some of those sustainable networks of community partners within your programs. And then eventually you could bring all of that together. I don't know. That's a pie in the sky, maybe kind of big idea.
I wanted to ask a question, and Francis, I'm going to ask you the question. So I apologize because I know you were just recently transitioned into your role, but Alejandro asked the question about the curricular development process. And prior, faculty who were developing a course as a service learning course, there was a particular form that they would fill out, and it essentially scaffolded the curricular development process, where faculty had to consider some of the things that we're talking about in this group in preparing their course. Currently, that's not with OLCE as it used to be in the office's previous iteration, but I noticed in CourseLeaf in the KIM system, when you propose a course, you can check a box that asks you if that course is going to be designated as service learning. And so my question for you, Francis, is if someone checks that box, what happens next? Like, is there a group on campus that is actually like then reviewing the courses, communicating with the faculty about that course being service learning and what types of expectations we have for service learning courses? And I understand you might not know, but
Yeah, that's an easy one for me to answer initially. I don't know the answer, but Lynn will know because she's our Kim person. So I will just go ahead and ask Lynn after this call, Jennifer, and send you her message, her reply, because I think there definitely should be some sort of process. It should be more than checking a box, but I don't know what that is. And I don't know much of the history of on this campus, you know, how courses have been prepared in the past. And I know things have, you know, fluctuated because of reorgs. So it's absolutely a great question to ask, and we need an answer, don't we?
thank you, Francis.
And so I'm curious for anyone who's currently doing service learning in their courses or in a co-curricular way. So, you know, Liliana and Alejandro, if you could speak to this just a little bit, but our student body is really unique. And so we have a lot of first gen, we have a lot of students that work outside of school. And so I think at the beginning of the conversation, it was brought up that, you know, how do you actually work in all the different components and, like, you know, make this kind of an equitable experience so that even our students that might work or they might be caretakers in their family, they have all these additional responsibilities. Like, how do you make sure that they get the opportunity to engage in this type of work as well, and access to this high impact practice? And are you thinking of any sort of innovative ways to like, as this kind of becomes an iterative process, and maybe you've done the course once, but you want to do it again a slightly different way, what are you taking into consideration for our specific student body?
Yeah, so let me take this very quick, and then I'll let Liliana. So very quick, I have the problem was not only the type of student body we serve, but sometimes the students, they are more familiar with the problems of the community that we are as faculty. And we have to recognize that position, specifically at UNCG, when, those services that they may be providing, they could be, they're very, very, very familiar with a lot of these things, specifically like services related to tutoring in schools for, for non-English speakers, things like that. So the way we approach the students, we have to also be sensitive, because they may be willing. I mean, they're very comfortable with that, with this level of. We know exactly what we talk about, because they could be in the other side. Also, the idea of working, being flexible, and one of the reasons I was talking to some people in my department about reducing the hours, because most of our students, they do work. So not only they're the specific type of community, they work, time is limited, and so those are things that I think flexibility is the key. And I know even some people over the years, they have prepared some service even within UNCG, within the campus, or even as a group. So okay, so we need some time. Let's look at this opportunity. We can volunteer here, and then we'll take the whole group to do something specific, as to make up some hours. That's it.
I do have to echo on Alejandro too. Flexibility is key. I usually, most of my students, I think most of them work. I'm not sure about they have families, but they do work, and I just make them aware that suggested deadlines, but at the end, being flexible with a lot with the bigger assignments, like the reflections, like things like that. But yeah, definitely.
I'll just say that having talked to colleagues through NCCE, like UNC Pembroke and Fayetteville State, Winston-Salem State, that idea of flexibility for non-traditional students is definitely at the forefront of their work too. And it makes sense. We do that to some extent at HPU. Like in my class, I only require 10 to 15 hours of on the ground service. And then the remainder of the 25 hours are through project-based work that they do in development and design, because they're working on products to give back to the community partners. And so we do offer that flexibility for faculty too. In some of the higher level courses that are discipline specific, they often work with a client. And so that amount of time is dependent on the client's availability and what the product is that they're working toward with that client. So we flex the hours there as well. We have some in the more quantitative fields that will do community-based research projects. So the development of, say, a survey instrument can be part of their service hours, even though that's not traditional on the ground, in a soup kitchen or a homeless shelter doing that work directly. They're still doing work in partnership with that community partner. So those hours count too. And so that's one of the ways that GivePulse has been helpful, because it gives us a way to quantify that and for the students to register those hours in different ways. And so we can see how all of those mesh together to create a service experience for a student, but they don't all have to follow that sort of traditional model of on the ground service where it's just, I'm going to do 25 hours tutoring or whatever that might be. So yeah, flexibility is definitely key.
And I think Katie may have had to leave, but someone had put in the document here that, they teach instructional design, and I think probably a lot of students from for our Library and Information Sciences program are remote, which also adds that layer of challenge. Like, how do we make sure that we offer these types of opportunities to our students who are online and are coming from different parts of the state or outside of the state? And I think that that's a great example that you've given, Alison, where you can have them do this project that is developed for a particular client that they might not have to physically go to that space. And that probably in some ways could be an option or applied in more traditional kind of service learning courses too, like just kind of checking in with your students and seeing like, do they have, are you able to help provide the transportation? Is this being done during class time or is it mostly outside? So just all of it is about kind of like the needs of our students and the needs of the community that they're serving in, and kind of also, backward designing around the specific objectives that you have in the course. Like if one of the biggest challenges is that there's all these partners to choose from and they take 5 weeks to just pick which partner, and then they finally reach out to them and find out that they don't need, someone anymore. Are there ways that you can really narrow those options for them so that they're focused more on the learning and meeting with that community partner rather than the logistical kind of cognitive load that comes along with like reaching out and getting to the space and things like that. But this is opening up some really good points of conversation that I think as we continue to kind of bring this work back and do it in a collaborative way across the campus of like what we really want to see in some sort of orientation, or what we want to see in like a faculty development offering. Like it could be a course incubator, it could be something that is self-paced online, but we would love to know, it could be now if you have any ideas to share, but what would be best for you as instructors from kind of that development standpoint? Like what are some of your needs? What would you like to see? Would you like to be part of this process? Alejandro, you had really great ideas around like that cultural responsiveness framework that we can build in, but we just want to make sure that whatever we're doing is in partnership with you all as instructors and those who are doing this type of work. So if you have any ideas now or in the future, we would love to hear them so that we can provide that support that is needed. And I know Ike is hoping to bring back our peer, what is it called? Not peer academic leader, student reflection leader program. Because I think that the student to student piece, especially in a service learning aspect, honestly, I feel like if you could have a student co-teach in almost any class, it really makes a difference. But I think especially with the service learning and having those who might be trained centrally and then placed in some of the classes could really be a benefit to kind of helping work out some of those logistical pieces that come up. So already lots of great work being done and good ideas shared. We are pretty much right at time. So I wanted to thank everyone who's able to come today, thank our panelists who are able to come and share their experiences. And even if it created more questions for us, I think these are all really great conversation starters for us to work through as a campus. Thank you so much to Alison for coming and sharing from your level of expertise that you have. We really appreciate it and probably will continue to stay in contact so that we can, as we're developing these resources, and then also have great contact with Susanna as well at UNC Charlotte. So we really appreciate everyone's time today and hope that you stay safe and dry and that your holidays are great. And we'll probably see a lot of you in the coming semester. We'll be in touch. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.